All right, so let's talk about Zoom basics and how we get logged in and kind of facilitate a meeting online. I'm at my Zoom account here, and I'm going to sign in. Got to change my login information here and sign in. When we sign in, it's going to take us to our meeting dashboard, and you'll have upcoming meetings here. Some people will have a different meeting for each of the things that they're in charge of. So like I've got 2 classes and a family group. Some people just use their personal room for everything, and they use it for the whole day. So you're probably going to end up using this just to keep it really nice and simple. So what I'm going to do is here kind of look over some of the settings. So it's all set up for you. And should you ever need to share this personal meeting room with a parent for a meeting or a student for whatever reason, and they don't have access to it or they lose access to it on Canvas, you can always copy this invitation, and it's going to pull up something that looks like this. I always copy just this part. So the link is a secure link. It'll take them to there. It will not require them to use a password if they have that link, because it's got this PWD, this password embedded in the link, but also they can use the meeting ID with your given password. So that's how you copy the invitation. When it comes time for that class to start, I'm simply going to hit start, and it's going to pop up on your computer like this. We want to join with audio. That's going to allow us to talk to them, they talk to us. And as we kind of look through some of the controls here, I'm going to go full screen. As we look through some of the controls here, your mute button is obviously going to keep them from being able to hear you. You'll still be able to hear them. Stop video, obviously it turns off video, and so that's important to be able to do at times. You may have something up on the screen where, I don't know, you've got the answer, you're writing the answers up on the board or whatever, so you may need to stop the video. Security, this just kind of gives you the ability, what students have the ability to do. So can they share the screen? I allow that at times. Sometimes I don't. Allow them to chat or no. And so, in my AP class, I have the chat turned on because I have a lot of kids that are on. With those Zoom kids, it's kind of important that they're able to kind of communicate with you either verbally or via chat, so I leave mine on. Can they rename themselves? I usually say no to that, and then I allow them to unmute themselves, yes. This is going to pop up your participants list, and right now there's nobody, but I'm kind of already logged in here. Let me see if I can join here. So when a student joins, that's the sound you're going to hear, is that doom doom sound. And so I've entered the waiting room, so I'm going to admit. And so now you have 2 people in your Zoom room, and that's going to be pretty standard. You'll have your Zoom students that pop up. And so from this dashboard, so let's say I click out of this, right? So from this dashboard, I can, that's a pumpkin. If I click participants, you can mute people. So I'm not joined with audio on that, but I can stop their video. Like I can turn off their video. Like if something inappropriate happens, like they start doing weird things like dancing or something like that, and you want to mute them, you can mute their video, and then you can ask them to start their video back up. If you want to, and it'll have a little dialog box. You can kind of see it has a dialog box that says, will you start your video? And I said, okay, so started the video back up. From here, you can rename them, make the host, you can put them in the waiting room. Sometimes, not often, maybe 2 or 3 times in the lifetime of us doing this, you'll have a student that just doesn't cooperate. They become argumentative, or they can't handle being on Zoom with you, and so you can put them in the waiting room. And if I do that, now they're in the waiting room, and they can't get in. They cannot get into the meeting unless you let them back in. And so, should you have a management issue, you can always bounce them to the waiting room, and then they're just out of the meeting and they can't distract anybody on there. So I'm going to admit myself back so you can see some more things. Admit. All right, so that's joining up. It's going to ask me, so there you heard the chime again. All right. So that's kind of everything under participants. Chat. So I pop up the chat box here, And the chat allows me to chat with everyone or just individual participants. Sometimes an individual participant will say, hey, can you stay with me, stay and meet with after class about my quiz? And I'll say privately to them, yes, we can meet for 5 minutes after class or whatever. And so just make sure if you're sending a message to them, like at times I'll say, hey, we're taking a mask break in class, so be back at 11:35 is when we're coming back from the mask break. And that'll let your Zoom participants know kind of what's going on. The expectation is that they have their video on during class, so you can see their face, and you can see that they're engaged, and so you can expect that from students. So if a student doesn't have their video on, you could say, hey, Johnny, can you please join with video? Remember, the expectation is that you're on video with us. They can have their microphones muted, and we actually do encourage them to have their microphones muted during class unless they're speaking, and so that kind of makes it easier for everybody to sort of hear. All right, share screen. This is important. So when we share screen is a primary way that you're going to present. So the share screen option is really cool because if your computer's hooked up to the projector, anything you share on the screen then becomes full screen. So check this out. It becomes full screen. And so now you're viewing my screen. And if your computer's connected to the projector, this is what you would see. So you can kind of see, here's what the Zoom participant looks like right now. They can see my screen. So if I turn it sideways, they can see my browser here. They see what I'm doing. I use that for my classes because I'll throw up my math notes, for example, and I'll share the screen. And then the people at home, they aren't using the computer camera to view the whiteboard. Does that make sense? So they're viewing the whiteboard, or they're viewing the video or whatever I'm doing as a screen share, and everybody in class is seeing it over the projector as they normally would. And so that's how we have screen share. And what you'll notice is the tools kind of pop away, they go away. And you can stop the screen share, you can pause the share, you can resume, you can annotate, so I can write on it if I want to say, hey, click this button here. And then under more, well, we don't really need that right now, so you can change the things about your screen sharing annotation. So I'm going to stop my share here. All right, pause and stop recording. So you can see up here that I'm recording. We're required to record our classes, and that's going to be helpful to you. You'll have the ability to share those recordings, especially with your students who may be absent, or your AEP students that want to go back and review, or geography students that want to go back and review. That screen share, that screen recording is going to be huge because it allows you to share what you did in class, and then they can review it for their own review, or they can do it for if they were absent. Okay. Let me quit this here. All right. So you can pause and stop the recording. So I stop my recording and I can hit record again. Breakout rooms, this is important. So this is how you would facilitate group work for Zoom kids that are online. So when I hit breakout rooms, it's going to give me the ability to create a certain number of breakout rooms, and it's going to tell you at the bottom how many participants per room. So let's say you have 6 kids online and you want to break them into 2 groups of 3, and you're doing 3 groups of 3 in class, and you got 3 Zoom kids. So you can do it like that. You can say, Zoom participants, you guys are in a group together. And so when I create those breakout rooms, it's going to allow me to sort people into rooms. So if I had a bunch of participants, a bunch of people, it would automatically sort them into rooms. And then I can move, so I can say, I don't want Johnny in room 1. He needs to be with Susie, who's in room 3, and I can move into room 3. And then when I open all rooms, it says all participants have been invited to join the breakout rooms. So it gives me this prompt here, if you can see this. It gives me this prompt here that says, it says, join the breakout room, and they will accept, and then they'll be sorted into their rooms. You can broadcast a message to all rooms, so sometimes I'll say, hey, 5 minutes left in the activity or whatever. Close all rooms. It'll give it 60 seconds. It'll give them 60 seconds to exit the room, and then it'll boot them out automatically. So I'm going to leave the room here. I can go back to the meeting. Okay. So that's kind of the basics of breakout rooms. Another way, so sometimes you can have your Zoom participants be in their own little groups, or 2 groups of 3. Another thing you could do is you can have students in your class join the Zoom meeting, and then you can put 1 Zoom participant into a group of live students by having them join with Zoom. So you have 1 device in a group of 3 in the class that's on Zoom, and that Zoom participant is in the breakout room with that person. And that works really, really well. And it really incorporates those Zoom learners into what you're doing in the classroom, and they get more individual conversation with people who are on the ground and hearing the instructions and things like that. So that's also a good way to do that. So after they get kind of brought back in from the Zoom rooms, you can see here, and they've transitioned and everybody's back in the meeting. I can open up all the rooms again. I can recreate the rooms and it will shuffle everybody in the rooms. And so you can do that if you want new groups. But that's kind of the way to facilitate breakout rooms. And if you have other questions about that, please let me know. Reactions, don't necessarily need it, but I can send everybody a thumbs up and it'll pop up there. Sometimes students will use that if you say, hey, do you guys understand the instructions? They'll send a thumbs up like that, or they'll give them a thumbs up on the meeting. Good rule of thumb for Zoom participants. In my classes, anything I say to the students out in the room, I'll say to my Zoom participants as well, or try to. So for example, hey, on number 3, there was a little part here where you had to remember to carry the 5 or carry the 2 up. That was really a sticking point on the quiz. Does anybody have any questions about why we do that? And there's always a lag on Zoom, right? So does anybody have any questions why we do that? Nobody in class. Hey, Zoom participants, did any of you have questions about why we do that? And that kind of gives them the hint that, like, I'm engaged with you, I'm knowing you. And sometimes I'll specifically say, I want one of our Zoom participants to answer this question. What was the purpose of the War of 1812 geopolitically? So you might say that. You might say, hey, to a specific Zoom participant. Obviously, try not to single them out. But if you have a group there that's 2 or 3, you can say, hey, would love for you guys to answer this question. You'll be hooked up to audio, so you'll have your computer hooked up to speakers. And when I go up to the top here, I have my volume button here, and it'll say, what is my output device? My MacBook speakers. So you want to make sure that we do that, and that's going to help us to keep the Zoom participants able to hear, but also if they have contributions, they can then have input on the discussion as well. All right, so the view button up here. So I like to. So speaker view will highlight whoever's speaking. Gallery view gives me a view of everyone. This is especially nice if you have, like I said, several Zoom participants. I like to keep them like this, and that way I can keep an eye on everybody when that's going. Let me see. I think that's pretty much everything about Zoom. And so when I end this meeting, so I say bye to my Zoom participants. I don't just end the meeting. I say, hey, bye everybody. We'll see you guys on Tuesday. End meeting for all. And it's going to pop up converting meeting to a cloud recorder. So that's for me. I don't know that yours is going to do that. We may have yours set up to do cloud recording on zoom.com or zoom.us. So I'm going to stop that converting. Stop there. All right. Anyway, so that's the basics of how to use Zoom for classes. And if you have any questions, obviously, please let me know.